Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, welcome to our third speaker. As usual, we want you to turn off all laptops, cell phones, PDA, whatever electronic instrument that you might have with you. We appreciate that. To let you know, next week, this is the first time we've had two in a row, but next week we will also have a guest speaker, Pat Ward. And then if you look at the website for Boardroom Insights, and I sent you all an email so you know about that, we have found the seventh speaker. Her name is Roxanne Martino. She is the head of our Business Advisory Council and runs a hedge fund in Chicago. So that will be later in the semester, November 13th. Make sure that you fill out your attendance cards. We'll be collecting at the end. I want to give you credit for attending the class. Today, our speaker is Mr. Jorndt, and I want to read you some things. The resumes are getting very long. I have to cheat and kind of use a sheet here. I don't want to miss anything. He began his career with Walgreens in '63, promoted to district manager in '68, regional director in '75, regional vice president in '79, vice president and treasurer in '82, senior vice president and treasurer in 1985, president and COO in 1990. The same year, he was elected to the Walgreens Board of Directors. Then he was named president and CEO in 1998 with the retirement of Charles Walgreen III. He then succeeded Charles Walgreen III as the chairman of the board in 1999. He was also appointed to the board of directors of the Kellogg Company in 2002, and in 2003 joined the advisory board for the Mutual Fund Investment Company of America. He retired in 2003 as chairman of the board and currently serves as a consultant for Walgreens. Walgreens is the largest drugstore chain with a fiscal sales in 2009 of $63 billion, operates more than 7,000 stores in 50 states, Puerto Rico, and the District of Columbia. Mr. Jorndt earned a pharmacy degree in '63 from Drake and an MBA in '74 from the University of New Mexico. He is married. His wife, Pat, is right here with him today. They met in Drake in '63. They have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. He's also a native of Chicago and is looking forward to the news around noon today. What's going to happen around noon today? Olympics. We're going to find out. Very excited about that. With that, Mr. Jorndt, the floor is yours.
Good morning. The mic on? Good morning. Okay. Thank you, Dean Gallio. Thanks for inviting me down to South Bend today. Not only do I get to speak to the business school, I get to go to the game tomorrow. So, pretty good weekend for the Jorndt family. Title is Patience, Pills, and Philosophy. A lot of alliteration there today. And I was in retail for 50 years. Retail is, believe me, not rocket science. So I'm just going to try and pass on today things I've seen and learned over 50 years in the retail business. I'm not here to preach. I'll leave that to the priests on Sunday. I do get a little preachy now and then. I apologize in advance, but that'll probably happen. I'm going to try and pass on some of my perspectives. Now, you're looking at an almost 70-year-old's perspective. You're young. You're still developing your perspective. So maybe this will help you along those lines from a perspective point of view. Drugstore's in my blood. I started working at Harold Losby's drugstore on a corner on the north side of Chicago when I was 8 years old. And I liked it. I was the delivery boy. I had to show up with my bike after school. There'd be 6 or 7 deliveries. And I didn't know about trade areas or marketing or any of the things that I learned later on in life, but I can tell you, Harold Losby's drugstore had a trade area of about 1 mile square. I never went out of it on my bike delivering these prescriptions. It was 1950. Minimum wage, you know what it was? 50 cents an hour. So if you got a dime tip, that was pretty good. A quarter was exceptional. Sometimes no tip, just a cookie or a thank you. But I did feel good delivering prescriptions to sick people or someone that had a child that was sick. By the time I was, 12, I was ringing the cash register at Losby's, stocking shelves, even helped Harold count the pills now and then. And back then, prescriptions sold for 75 cents, 99 cents, $1.49. Can you imagine? And Old Harold, he was back behind the counter. He had this little slit he'd look out through. And if it was an expensive prescription, he'd say, "Oh, Dan, will you come back here for a second?" And I knew I'd have to go out with a $5 prescription to face Mr. Smith, who would be pretty ticked off about paying $5 for a prescription. Then my mom was a registered nurse. She worked at this hospital not far from our home. And she got me a job there when I started high school running the big dishwasher there in the cafeteria. We had old people's home and the hospitals. They'd come in after school, knock out the breakfast and lunch dinner dishes, and then by then the evening dishes were pouring in, get those done and go home. But I only did that for a couple months, and I think Mom got the guy that ran the pharmacy and said, "Hey, my boy's over there running the dishwasher. Maybe you could give him a job in the pharmacy." So I worked at this pharmacy all through high school. When I come home summers from college, Mr. West, that ran this pharmacy, it's ironic, he was a retired Walgreens store manager. And he'd say, "Dan, when you get out of school, come to work here, but first, go to work for Walgreens for a couple of years. That's where you'll learn the retail drug business." This is the 185-pound version of me, and the guys at Walgreens always put BHP in there. You know what that stands for? Big hair pile. That's the way we all wore them back then. Then I went off to college, and I worked with Marion Williams in this little corner drugstore in a real tough area of Des Moines, Iowa. We were down there on Center Street. Our little strip center was very active. We had a little bitty drugstore, a speakeasy because you couldn't buy liquor in a bar back then in Des Moines, only in state liquor stores. And then the third element was the busiest little whorehouse in Des Moines, Iowa. So, boy, I learned a lot. But, no, not that. I learned a lot working in this drugstore. I learned how poor people were. We were the largest welfare pharmacy in the state of Iowa. 99% of our prescriptions were welfare. There was no Medicaid back then. It was welfare. And these people were very poor. You could have made a good sitcom. We had a little soda fountain, 5 stools, about what went on in that drugstore. We had Henry Hammett and Donald Burrell. They ran the garbage trucks for the whole city of Des Moines. They're entrepreneurs, very wealthy. We had Joe Cotton, who drove a Cadillac, wore nice suits, had a snappy hat. He ran all the drugs in Des Moines. We had a fellow named Tree, never learned his last name, big guy, looked like an NFL defensive end. He ran all the girls in Des Moines. And then we had Dr. Ware, Dr. Griffin, and Dr. Jones, who worked from 7 in the morning till 9 at night every day, 7 days a week, trying to support the health of these very poor people with terrible nutrition, living in terrible conditions. So it was a great learning experience for me working with Marion. He still sends me on the internet, he's 89 or something, he sends me a scripture lesson every day. He still thinks I'm a work in progress after all these years. Got out of school, went to work for Walgreens. Marion Williams also said, "Go to work for Walgreens, learn the retail business." Worked for Walgreens about a year. I always wanted to go to California. I'm a native Midwesterner, quit Walgreens, went to California, stayed out there a little less than a year, came back for Pat, for the Midwest, and for Walgreens, signed up again, and I stayed there 40 years. Walgreens doesn't look like this back then. Back then it was little corner stores, bus stop corners, soda fountains, liquor departments, a lot different than the freestanding stores you see today. Dean Galley already covered this, largest and most national. That's where all the 7,000 stores are. Those red dots are the next couple thousand stores already through our real estate process that'll be rolled out in the next 2 to 3 years. So 60-some billion in sales, couple billion in profits. It's a good company, been around since 1901, started by a stubborn Swede named Walgreen. His father had a farm out west of Chicago. He didn't like farming. Came to Chicago 1901, opened one drugstore. They've been in business 108 years. And since 75 is when the company had kind of churned, I would say, for many years, from the 40s and 50s, 60s, In the 70s, Walgreens really got going, and it just completed its 35th consecutive year of record sales, and its 34th. It's got 34 years of consecutive earnings increases, and that's a good record. Only Walmart, of all the publicly traded companies, can match that record. I'm not bragging, I'm just giving you the facts. I've got this up here to make a point, a decade of transition, and the point of this is that no business can stand still. In 1999, Walgreens had been in business 98 years. You think they had it figured out. Well, the company's changed dramatically in the last 10. You can look at those numbers. I won't read them to you. But I will make 2 points on the 1-hour photo and the drive-through pharmacy. At Walgreens, we practiced, and I believe Walgreens still practices, what we call crawl, walk, run. And what that means is you don't bet all your chips on some new idea. You test it first. You learn about it. You crawl. You figure it out. Once you figure it out, you start rolling it out. You keep learning. And once you've got it figured out 90%, because you never get it 100% figured out, then boom, you pop the clutch and you run. So it's crawl, walk, run. I'll give you 2 examples. 1-hour photo, we crawled in 1-hour photo from 84 to 96. It took us 12 years to figure it out. We tried pricing, advertising, marketing, sizes, coupons. Couldn't get it. Didn't give up. Was persistent. Finally, we figured it out. And then we rolled it out nationwide in 2 years so that every store had 1-hour finishing, photo finishing. So, and today, Walmart, Walgreens are the 2 largest photo finishers in America. But it took 12 years to figure it out. But we had people that believed in it. They wouldn't give up. They hung in there. Finally figured it out. A different one was drive-through pharmacy. Back in the late 80s, we were trying to figure out how do we keep expanding our company. A lot of little towns maybe can't support a full-sized Walgreens. So they came up with this concept of Walgreens RX Express. Little stores, just pharmacy and some drug items, no cosmetics, no ice cream, no Easter candy, just drug stores, little ones. We thought, let's put a drive-through in them and see what happens. We didn't have any drive-throughs. So we opened 5 on the same day, right down the street here in Evansville, Indiana. See what happened. The first day, day 1, those stores filled 30% of their prescriptions through the drive-thru. 30%. You know, all good ideas looking backwards are simple. We had to open 5 stores to figure out McDonald's had already trained the world on drive-thru. The banks had already trained the world on drive-thru. So that crawl, walk, run literally took 1 day. The day after we opened those freestanding stores, we got to work figuring out how to put drive-thru in all our stores. And 2 years later, because that's the amount of time it takes to develop and open a store, we started opening every store with drive-thru. And our competition thought we were crazy. And we'd say, well, yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it costs more money. Yeah, it's less efficient. Yeah, no, it's all right. We just kept rolling them out. And after about 5 years, the competition said, hey, wait a minute. There must be something to it. And there was. Customers loved it. So there's a case where crawl, walk, run happened very fast. Whereas in the photo, it took 12 years. You have to keep trying things, experimenting. I won't go through all the things we tried that failed, but these are a few successes. But we crawl, we walk, we run, and things worked out. Also on that subject of trying things, there's an expression that has to do with innovation. That's, you can't beat the man that builds the road. So that's why you have to keep trying things. Every now and then, you'll be the man or you'll be the woman that builds the road. There's a good book written probably, golly, 15 years ago now. And you've all heard of Collins. He wrote Good to Great. But he wrote this back in, I want to say, the early 90s. And he and another fellow from Stanford, they studied companies that had been around 100 years or more. Institutions, 100 years or more. They said, what makes an institution last? You know what they found out? It's not widgets. It's not products. They looked at Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson and Eastman Kodak. And it's fair to say none of those companies have a single product on the market today that they were selling 100 years ago. They found the key ingredient. the companies lasting a long time was high ideals and high ethical values, not products. And they found out the why of that. If you have a company with high ethics and high ideals, you'll attract the best people, and they'll stay. And they'll build a great company for you. And yesterday's widgets are in the trash can, and they'll come up with today's widgets. It's a people thing, and people are attracted to and stick with companies with high values and high ethics. I'll give one example from the book. Merck Sharp and Dohme, they used to be called. George Merck said, "We make medicine for people, not for profits. If we make good medicine, the profits will follow." So you go out to Merck in New Jersey, carved into the wall out there, Merck's goal to eliminate pain and disease worldwide. That's their high goal. Eliminate pain and disease worldwide. Pretty high goal. You go back to the 80s, the Merck scientists were working, trying to solve river blindness. There's no river blindness in Indiana. But if you go to equatorial Africa, millions of people go blind from this parasite. It's called river blindness. The Merck scientists came up with a drug. You've never heard of it. It's called intermectin. It cured river blindness. Cured it. They were excited. They went over to these African countries, talked to the doctors. There was no market. The people that get river blindness were in the rural areas, had no money. They couldn't pay for it. Went back to New Jersey, had another meeting. We'll sell it to the government. The government will cure all these people. The government's over there so corrupt. We don't have any money for those folks. That's what happens if you live in the tribal areas. You get river blindness, you go blind, and you die young. Now, what did Merck do? The fellow running at the time, Roy Gallegos, an MD, he looked up out there on the wall. He said, "Hey, eliminate pain and disease worldwide. That's why we're here." He said, "All right, men and women, start up the factories, run them 7 days a week. We're going to give this away." And some young accountant said, "How long are we going to give it away?" "In perpetuity. We're going to give it away forever." Gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? Because we're here to eliminate pain and disease worldwide. Not to do that, said Gallegos, would put a stake right in the heart of our research scientists. Everything we tell them we stand for be washed away if we didn't do this. So now we're 20 years later, Merck's still giving away intermectin, because perpetuity is a long time. Now, Merck has their creeds, Notre Dame has their creeds, Walgreens has their creeds, and this is like the Ten Commandments. You want to work for outfits, they're always putting those ideals up there. Because you're going to have people that steal, rob, cheat in big organizations. There's a bell-shaped curve. You're always trying to shift the curve towards the good side, but there is a bell-shaped curve. I'll just read you one sentence from this old Mr. Walgreen, the guy that founded the company, wrote this in the 20s. I'll read one sentence. "We believe that honest goods can be sold to honest people by honest methods." You think he was trying to get honesty across? One sentence, honest 3 times. And then his son, the other Mr. Walgreen, Jr., he asked the Rotary if we could put the 4-way test in every store, warehouse, distribution center, office, regional office. Rotary says, "Fine, you can use it, and we've been using it for 60 years. Just give us a little attribution," said Rotary. If you look way down here in the bottom, it says copyright Rotary International. What we say to our young managers, look, you got a problem with an employee, you got a problem with a vendor, before you call your boss and say, "Hey, what should I do?" go read the 4-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Real basic stuff. But basic stuff, read over and over, sets the bar real high and is very motivating. Can be very motivating. Talk about decisions. If you're in the business school, you can be making a lot of decisions.
I'll start off by saying I don't think committees make good decisions. I think the real good decisions are lonely decisions. That's one person, that outlier out there, saying this is the way to do it. This is what I believe in. You put a committee together, you got the best ideas and the worst ideas, and they end up somewhere between pretty good and better than pretty good, but you never end up with the real good decisions. Because the tough ones are hard. The tough ones are lonely. The tough ones need an outlier. Someone out there that really knows what they're talking about and fights for it and hopefully makes it happen. Companies like Merck, like Notre Dame, organizations that have these high ideals, there's lots of war stories go around for decades of good decisions they've made to set a high bar for people to follow. And I'll tell you one good Walgreen one. We had a fellow named Canning, Fred Canning, tough Irish guy. He ran our company for about 12 years. And one of our high-volume California stores, one of the pharmacists there discovered the automatic pill counting machine, these little white tablets, for a couple of weeks was pumping out. They'd filled it with the wrong little white tablets. So about 6 dozen customers got the wrong medicine. And I was a fairly young guy at the time, but I happened to be in this meeting. There's probably 12, 15 people in the meeting. What are we going to do? We gave 6 dozen people the wrong medicine. One of our people had been around quite a while, in pharmacy, pretty high up in the organization. He said, you know, it's not a real potent medicine. And no one got more than a 30-day supply. And it happened 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks from now, the first people will start coming in for refills. And a month from 2 days ago, we will have refilled them all. Maybe we just shouldn't say anything. And no one will be the wiser. Fred Canning said, stop right there, get your notebooks out, write this down. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to call every patient, tell them we made a mistake. We're going to call every doctor of those patients, tell them we made a mistake. We're going to call the California Pharmaceutical Association, the California Medical Association. We're going to tell everybody we made a mistake. If we get sued and the company's taken down, that's okay. We're all going to sleep good tonight. This meeting is over. And that's what we did. Fortunately, we didn't get sued. But that's a good example of someone doing the right thing, and then those stories, and I could tell you a few more but won't, doing the right thing that gets told over and over tends to lift up the ethical values and promote the right thinking within a company. No silver bullet. Well, our company was called in the book Good to Great a hedgehog company. They used the parable, the hedgehog and the fox. The fox is wily, knows a little bit about everything, does this, does that. Hedgehog, one-dimensional, very focused, one-dimensional, goes to work every day, does his job well, goes home at night, works hard. That's the hedgehog. We took that as a compliment. Yep, that's us. We're one-dimensional. We're highly focused. Didn't take us as an insult at all. And it worked for us. These AV people, there's no silver bullet. We're hard work, good thinking people. That's the answer. You've all heard of the book Good to Great, and I won't talk about the book at all, other than once an outfit starts thinking they're great, sell or stop. You never arrive in business. Notre Dame has never arrived, for example. They're still trying to get better. So as a manager, as a leader, yeah, we're good. We're pretty good. We want to get better. I think that's what you want to promote. Back in the Roman times, when the generals would ride in their chariots after a victory, they'd have a guy stand next to them. So while the crowds are all cheering, the guy standing next to him, he's whispering in his ear, "You're only a man. You're only a man. You're only a man." We went from pretty good to good. There's still more to do. Well, this is good. We were at a manager's meeting back in the early 2000s. Alan Greenspan was on the TV every night. Doom and gloom, the economy's bad, the dollar's sinking, stock market's going nowhere. It was pretty bad. And this one manager said, "Hey, Mr. Jorndt, you know who that guy reminds me of?" "No, who does he remind you of?" "Well, watch this." Isn't that uncanny? Take a look at this. I think there's a genetic connection. my point is, and you've run into her already, and most of you are pretty young, you always have people telling you something can't be done, that won't work, and this won't work. You're surrounded. Nothing travels faster than a negative statement. If I give a good speech today, maybe you'll each tell one other person. If I have a heart attack and die here today, oh man, the whole campus will know. That guy was giving a speech, he had a stroke and died right on stage. Nothing travels faster than a negative statement. So you have to be that countervailing, positive force. Don't let the negative people wear you down. And that's why businesses need young people like you. You come in, you're going to change things. Change them by accentuating the positive. I do think that's pretty amazing. Okay, a little bit about leadership. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. Written by Caroline Alexander. It's the story of Ernest Shackleton. He was going to go and be the first guy to transverse the South Polar ice cap. Someone had already been to the South Pole, so this was the next best thing to do. He set off in 1914 in this specially made ship, a sailing ship, no motor, go transverse the South Pole. They got caught in the South Polar ice cap. The saying is, what the ice gets, the ice keeps. Well, they stayed with their boat a couple months. Ice kept crushing it. Finally, their boat sank. And there they were on this huge floating ice cap, not land. They saved 3 little boats, lifeboats, and a few supplies. Now, before Shackleton set off, and here's one of the points, he selected the best he could find at everything he needed on that trip. The best navigator, the best shipwright, the best carpenter, the best cook. These 27 men he selected were the best at what they could do, the best he could find. He really took his time on selection. Now he's got 28 guys on this ice floe. Ship's gone. What are we going to do? He was a leader. He was positive. We'll get out of this. We'll stick together. We'll get out of this. He had them load what supplies they had in these 3 little lifeboats. They attached ropes to them. They dragged them miles across the ice cap until they found open ocean. They loaded themselves in these 3 little boats. They rowed for 6 days. It's cold, rowing, to Elephant Island. Dead reckoning. They had a little compass. They managed, and now they're on land. It's the first time their feet had been on land in 500 days. But they're outside the sea lanes. They're outside the whaling lanes. No one's going to find them there. But there's little greenery there, lots of penguins to eat. He's so positive. After they finished eating all their dogs, the next morning Shackleton said, "Hey, buck up, boys. We don't have to eat dog today." Positive thinker. He told these guys at Elephant Island, "Stay here. I'm taking 5 others, 5 best of the best, and a 23-foot lifeboat, their biggest one, 23 feet from that podium to about here. 6 guys, cover it with canvas, off they go." He told his second in command, "You stay, I'll be back. Keep these men busy. Keep them thinking, keep them working." 17 days they sailed. Still put up as maybe one of the greatest navigation feats in history. 17 days, South Georgia Island, 36 hours through waist-deep snow. They got to a whaling station, got to Chile. 5 months later, he got back there with an ocean-going tug. No one died. Everyone survived. He was a leader. He picked the best, and when the chips were down, he didn't say, "You 6 go on the 17-day sail, maybe make it, maybe won't, to South Georgia Island." He stepped up. And when the ship is sinking, then the leader has to go to the front. Other than that, I believe in delegation all the way. But if the ship is sinking, you better be out front of the troops. Jack Welch, who I don't agree with on most things, did say one thing I agree with heartily. He talked about GE. He said, "We have 4 kind of people at GE. We have the kind that buy our values and are high performers. For them, the sky's the limit. We have those that don't buy our values and don't perform. That's easy. They're gone. We have those that buy our values and don't quite hit the numbers every year. We'll keep them around. We'll give them a second chance, a third chance, maybe a fourth chance. But the toughest kind of manager to deal with is that manager that always makes the numbers and doesn't buy our values. That's the guy or girl that got ahead by knocking people down, kissing up to the boss, cutting corners. We got to get rid of that kind of manager too. I thought that was a pretty sage comment from the guy running GE. And I think that's true in business. I saw it many times in our company. They say, well, yeah, old Tony, he's a son of a bitch, but he makes money. He doesn't buy into what we buy into, but he makes money. Those are the people you got to straighten out or get rid of. A lot of Latin here at Notre Dame. Probably no one knows what that means. My bride, we built this cottage up in Wisconsin, and that's a mortar and pestle over there. She put in one for each of our children and ourselves on the fireplace. And what that means, and it's now, today, or the quick translation, is do it now. And don't procrastinate. Do presidents of companies procrastinate? Absolutely. Do presidents of universities procrastinate? Absolutely. Do professors at Notre Dame procrastinate? Well, maybe not. But it's part of the human condition. We all procrastinate. We all put things off. As Pat and I moved around the country with Walgreens, we had this one saying. She'd say, do we have to leave that on the refrigerator? Yeah, let's just leave it there another 10 years. And it was from Eleanor Roosevelt. Here's what she said. And I'll paraphrase it, because this is pretty wordy. She said, I quote, you gain strength, courage, and confidence every time you look fear in the face. You must do what you think you cannot do. Now, Dan's take on that, I'd tell myself, Dan, you got to do what you really don't want to do. You got to do what you really don't feel like doing. Do the tough stuff first. Most of us check the email, go through all the easy stuff, and then the medium stuff. The hard stuff, we leave it for later. It's true in business. You do the tough stuff first, a week ahead of time, you always have a great idea the next day or the next day. If you wait till midnight before it's due, then that great idea you have, you already turned it in. I'm sure it's happened to you. So do the tough stuff first, in the morning. If I had to fire somebody Monday morning, not Friday afternoon, I didn't want to worry about it all week. Lena Rubinstein was a great cosmetics magnate. Big empire, I think all that's left is heaven-sent cologne. She'd say, I make my list, so everything hard I have to do is done by noon, every day. Then I have a pleasant afternoon. I thought this may seem a little obtuse, but back in the old days of the firing squad, they always shoot the guy at dawn. Why have those guys polishing their rifles all day and the poor condemned man sitting in the cell? Sun comes up, boom! Everybody's done, go golfing. So hold your eye at nothing. Do it now. You all know who Albert is. He could write formulae from here to Phoenix. Brilliant. Numbers, statistics. But look what he said. This rings my bell. Imagination is more important than information. And you folks, that information is coming at you out of these servers like popcorn out of a machine. You got to make sense out of it. Albert says imagination is more important. You got to make sense of all that information. Life is not linear. Business is not linear. Many people think it is, but it's not. Some people with all the information don't have any imagination. I'll give you two quickies. AT&T, 1982, biggest telephone company in the world, knew more about telephones, had more information about telephones than anyone. AT&T. They developed a portable phone. About this big, weighed about 6 pounds, but it worked. They studied it, studied all the information. You know what their conclusion was? The worldwide market for portable phones would never, perpetuity, never exceed 500,000 users. AT&T. I just saw the number last week. Get a number in your head. How many cell phones are there in the U.S.? There's 300 million people here, men, women, children, nursing homes, 300 million people. How many cell phones? Number knocked me out. Here it is, 262. 262 million cell phones. Everybody's got at least one. Some people have 2 and 3. Some of you are using it right now on BlackBerry and zoning out on my talk. I understand. They had lots of information, no imagination. Anybody here ever heard of DEC? I'm sure Professor Gallio has. DEC was the second largest computer builder in the world. Almost neck and neck with IBM. Mid-80s, their head guy Ken Olsen said, and it's been written about, I quote, "Why would anyone," the internet wasn't here yet in the mid-80s, "why would anyone want a personal computer on their desk?" That was his famous words. And that's why none of you have ever heard of DEC. Albert also said have fun. And I don't mean kindergarten fun. But if you're a boss and you got a smile on your face, if you're a boss and you're upbeat, you want that in your organization. You want spirit. Your school's got spirit. What if Notre Dame had no spirit? Would it be Notre Dame? I don't think so. So you don't want to have the numbers drag you down. You don't want to have your associates drag you down. Having fun is good. And when I talk to younger folks, I always like to bring up something else Einstein said. Someone asked him, Al, what's the most powerful thing in the world? Is it nuclear energy? Nope. Solar energy? Nope. Well, what is it? Compound interest. That's what Albert said. And I've worked with many top-notch financial people that know about compound interest, but didn't use it. In my years on Wall Street, I can tell you, time makes you money more than timing. You put $10,000 away today, make 7% on it for 40 years, it'll double 4 times. 20, 40, 80, 160. It's pretty good from a $10,000 investment made in 1 year. Put away at 10%, it'll double 6 times in 40 years. 10,000 becomes 640,000. Something to think about. I plead with you as I pleaded with my children when they were in school. Get that saving habit. Start saving early and save for as long as you work. And then when you're retired, you won't have to worry about Social Security or someone else taking care of you. That's my little sermon for you. I apologize for the sermon. All right, so what have I learned in 50 years of drugstore retailing? Keep learning. Doesn't stop when you read Notre Dame. Doesn't stop when you put down the textbooks. Read, listen, watch. Hang around with people that know more than you. Hang around with people that have done things you haven't done. Hang around with people different than you. Keep learning. Optimists prevail. Put that smile on your face. It's tough some days, believe me. Pessimists don't prevail. They are right some of the time, but you've never seen a statue to a pessimist, and I doubt that you ever will. Be persistent. Hang in there. You believe in something, don't give up. Wear the other people down with your persistence, if you believe in it. Take risks. Stick your neck out. Measured risks, not bet the farm risks. Crawl, walk, run. Risks based on your experience, based on your knowledge, based on what you've seen. Take no risks, the world stops today. Risk takers are what move us along. Well, I beat this to death. Do it now. Don't procrastinate. Tough stuff first. Hodii et nunc. Build your business. Wherever you are, whatever level you're at. The more you can act like an owner, the better you'll do. I'm sure Dean Gallio acts like an owner at Notre Dame. You know, something needs painting, he says something to somebody. It's not his job, but he's acting like an owner. wherever you are, try and think and act like an owner. Boy, do bosses love that. You're not trying to usurp any of their authority. You're just trying to act like you're a member of the team, that you're part owner of the outfit. The more you can act like an owner and the less like an employee, the better job you'll do and the better you'll do. Small skirmishes do win big battles. See, my time is here. Yeah, I can tell you a quick story. Back in the Civil War, there was a guy named Joshua Chamberlain, history professor, Bowdoin College, Maine, enlisted. And if you were a college professor, bang, you were a lieutenant colonel because you were smart. So now it's Gettysburg. He's there with 100 men. Pretty beat up. He started with 200. 100 were already gone. They said, Chamberlain, hold that hill till you're relieved. He did. He held it for almost 2 days, early on in the Battle of Gettysburg, when the forces were just marshaling on each side. He held it against repeated charges of superior Confederate forces, some of Alabama and Georgia's best, coming up the hill at Chamberlain and his men. After 2 days, he was down to like 60 men, many of them wounded, no water, no ammunition. And they could see the Confederates massing for another charge. Chamberlain says, here's what we're going to do. When they're halfway up the hill, we're going to charge down. And they said, what? And they did. And the Confederates were so shocked by these men screaming down the hill, they turned, went back. Chamberlain's men went back up to the top and were relieved shortly thereafter. He got the Congressional Medal of Honor. He ended up being the governor of Maine. But here's the punchline. As historical scholars look back on the Battle of Gettysburg, that little hill down there on the left flank, that was Little Round Top. Had he not held it, the Union would have been flanked. The Gettysburg battle probably would have gone the other way. So the point I'm trying to make, if there's something you really believe in, and the boss says no, go back in again, and go back in again, as long as you think you're right. Because you making that little change, you holding that little hill, look back upon 4 or 5, 10 years later, might have been a turning point in the company. We had a turning point in our company. Once Mr. Walgreen said at a meeting, kind of offhandedly, we got 600 soda fountains and restaurants. I'd like to be out of that business in 5 years. And I was, yeah, it's a good idea. 6 months later, we were at a meeting, and he said to the then president, how are you coming on closing up those restaurants? He says, well, we're still thinking about it. Thinking about it. He says, yeah, we got 5 years to do it. He says, no, Fred. You have 4.5 years to do it. And boy, did we get in gear then. But that was one decision that markedly changed our company. Just one guy that believed we should do something, and we did. Now, it helped he was the top guy, but I think someone else could have said that too. Stretch. Stretch. No one can stretch you but you. I can't stretch you. Dean Gallio can't stretch you. You got to have that talk with the person in the mirror in the morning. You got to keep learning, keep trying, keep smiling. You have to motivate yourself. People say, oh, I couldn't get ahead, no one would motivate me. I think that's baloney. I think 90% of what happens for motivation, you have to do it to yourself. It's hard, tough, possible. Look out for each other. You want to work for outfits where people look out for each other. Just as you look out, I'm sure there's things you don't like about Notre Dame, but if you're a bar in Chicago and someone says Notre Dame sucks, I'm sure the hair comes up on the back of your neck because you're looking out for your university. And it's the same in business. I'll give you one other little vignette I like. Kipling wrote a bunch of books. In his second Jungle book, he had this little poem in there. It's about 6 lines. It goes like this. Here is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky, and the wolf that believes it will flourish, and the wolf that ignores it will die. As the creeper envelops the tree trunk, the law moves forward and back. Here comes the punchline. The strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. Get it? The strength of the pack is the wolf. You need strong individual performers. But the strength of the pack is the wolf. You need both. The strength of the wolf is the pack, yeah. And thank you, I think it's the most underused word in business, and I think many times in our culture. Everybody says thank you if they get a present, or thanks for taking me out to dinner. But how often do you get a handwritten thank you note? Hey, you did a great job. How about a paper? You remember a paper you got back from a teacher one time that said, hey, Bill, this was great. You still remember it. Because people don't take the time to say thank you often enough, especially in business. And I've worked with people, say, hey, you thank them too much, they'll go to sleep. Don't thank them, they'll get spoiled. If someone does something well, I think you can thank them every day. If they do something well every day. People never get tired of it. And if something does something terrific, and you write them a handwritten note and say thanks, might be your mom or dad, might be an uncle, might be a teacher, you know how long they'll save that note? Forever. They put it in the drawer. And they're having a bad day or a bad year. 10 years from now, they'll pull that out and say, boy, you know, at one time someone thought I was a pretty good professor, mom, uncle, dad. I'm a big believer in saying thank you and saying it often. So with that, I'll say thank you and take any questions you might have.
David, do you have microphone?
I can hear you. Just speak up.
We would like you to come forward to the mic over here to ask questions. We want to record the questions. So,
Come on, don't be bashful. I've got till the game tomorrow.
go ahead. That microphone.
My name is, hello.
I think it's the red light's on.
Okay. My name is Carly DaCosta. I'm a first year MBA. I just wanted to know some of, I guess, your first priorities and some of the things that were going through your mind. I mean, being the first successor, I guess, of the Walgreens. I mean, that's a pretty big responsibility to carry on their name and developing and continuing to build the business like you've built it. I mean, it's incredible. And especially the time that we were, or, the economy and all the pressures at the time. So.
Yeah, the question is, how did I feel about our company had 3 chairmen in 97 years. They're all named Walgreen. And then when the third retired, then I got that job. And she says, well, was that a daunting thing, or how did I feel?
And I got to tell you, at that time, I'd been with Walgreens 28, 29 years. I worked from coast to coast in the stores. And it wasn't daunting, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way. We were just a working company. I knew all the players. They all knew me. There's a couple other fellas, good friends of mine, still good friends of mine, who were probably all in the running to get that job. And it was more of the same. I saw my job in getting in that position was to keep building the company, ramp up our aspirations. I think that's something that I was able to do. But you can't be a one-man. You ever see one wrestler? It's not much fun. It's a team effort. And let's think about it. So I don't want to say it was business as usual. I was very challenged. I was very honored. But the next day I had to come into work and do something. And because I'd spent my whole life in the business, my attitude was, we're going to ramp up our sales, we're going to expand our stores, get everybody with us, and having high expectations and having everyone share those with you. I remember an early managers meeting, we cleaned up our stores, the company was growing, and I gave a talk entitled, What's Our Second Act? In other words, a lot of outfits have one good first act. What's our second act? And our second act was high-powered growth. That we were going to go, we had 1,400 stores in 1990. We set a goal, that was after 90 years in business. We're going to double the number in 10 years. And everybody went, oh! But then the next day, everybody got to work in all the different respective disciplines, and it happened. But that high goal, I think, was something that kind of coalesced everybody in the company and said, hey, yeah, we're good. We can be better. we'll set that goal and we'll go from there. So, did I have a lump in my throat? Yes. But just go back to work. Be persistent, hang in there, and it worked out.
Hi. I was wondering if Walgreens is projecting any impact on their pharmaceuticals with the recent healthcare reform or possibility of healthcare reform?
Yeah. What is the possible impact on Walgreens of healthcare reform? Whenever the government gets involved, business, if the government's going to pay for it, improves. Now, that may or may not be a good thing, but usage will improve. Prescription numbers will improve if there's health care, and right now we have a prescription health care for people on Medicare. Did prescription numbers go up? They certainly did. That drugstore I worked at in Des Moines was all welfare. Every patient got 5 or 6 prescriptions because they weren't paying for it. If those doctors had to be sensitive to the fact that those poor people, had to pay for those prescriptions, they might have got an antibiotic and a cough syrup, and that was it. But as it was, they got an antibiotic, a cough syrup, an antihistamine, a thermometer, and you name it, they got it because it was free. But as you know, nothing's free. So I think the impact on Walgreens' big picture, margins would probably go down a little bit, more than offset by increase in sales. Plus, the other thing that happens with a conveniently run outfit like Walgreens, we have lots, 7,000 units. Well, Walmart's only got 2,500 units. If you got 7,000, soon to be 10,000 drugstores across America, and price doesn't become a concern, you go where it's closest, good service, very convenient. So in that respect, government-paid health care prescriptions would also benefit Walgreens. Am I for national health care with a public option? No, but it would help Walgreens. Sorry to have you walk so far. It's good exercise going back up the stairs.
You said, you talked about making the lonely decision, and you obviously had a long history with Walgreens through a lot of changing times, and I wanted to know what the most difficult decision or most lonely decision you had to make.
The hardest decision we had to make? Well, a lot, you make the decisions, and folks, most decisions aren't life and death, black and white. We made some wrong decisions. I'm a big believer in mid-course correction. So just do it now, keep making decisions, keep making them. You make a wrong one, either admit you're wrong, scuttle it early, it didn't cost you very much, or maybe you're only half wrong. Make some mid-course corrections. Fix it. That you're only half wrong. You're not trying to prove anything, you're trying to develop the business. But I think back, most of our decisions, like go from 1,500 to 3,000 stores, if we hadn't made it, would I be hanging out front of Walgreens? Probably not. But the fact that everybody was committed to it, we did it. I can think of one, we were in a room with a couple consultants. This is back in the early 90s. We wanted to have, and this is kind of like the Drivethru story looking back, we wanted to have a fully automated, fully integrated telephone system for refilling prescriptions. That Miss Smith could call in, punch in her prescription number, punch in her address, punch in when she wanted it ready, anywhere in the country, punch in the store number, which is on the label, and it would be ready in whatever store she designated whenever she wanted it. Now, think about the integration on that. Walgreens sends more information over satellite communication than anyone in the world other than the U.S. government. It's all online, real time. That costs us hundreds of millions of dollars. But this is this one little application. But you couldn't develop it or test it in a vacuum. It was all or none. You either build a system and hope it works, or you don't build a system. And the price tag on that in 91 was $25 million. So it was just the chief financial officer, Chuck, and Dan, and these couple of consultants. And Chuck said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think we should do it." He said, "Well, it's $25 million. Yeah, I think we should do it." And it's sort of like the Drivethru story. We turned that on nationally, inside of a year, oh, customers loved it. But that was a roll of the dice. That wasn't crawl, walk, run. But by then, we'd had a lot of experience in pharmacy. We talked to a lot of our other folks. It wasn't just the two of us making that decision. We were a big enough company, we decided, you know, 25 million's a lot of money. But if it works, we'll be 2-3 years ahead of the competition. And it did work. So that was a toughie. Most of them, I would say in business, as you go along, the toughest things you have to do are people decisions. You got to replace somebody, demote somebody, you know. And although I might be pretty vociferous up here, I really believe in business, you should never raise your voice. Unless it's, you know, a meeting or something trying to rev people up. You can't fire someone quietly and be nice, then you probably shouldn't have a big job. And ditto with counseling people. You got to pour your heart out to people and get them to know you really want them to change for the right reasons. And change they do some of the time, but certainly not all of the time. It's a good question. Thank you. We have an open mic.
Let me throw out one question for you. In your new role, according to your bio, you're a consultant for Walgreens Company. Is there anything that you could share with us that's kind of the latest thing that you're involved with as far as consulting?
Yeah, that's kind
of misnomer. I'm not a consultant for Walgreens. I believe that when you're done, you're done. So 8 years ago when I walked out the door, they said, well, everybody else has stayed on the board. I said, you know, I believe in fresh ideas, fresh thinking. If I stay, no matter how I try, the new guy isn't going to do it the way I do it. And I'm not going to get in his way, so I'm leaving. I'll not be back. And I have not been. Now, I was at the Kellogg board. That was a great experience. Kellogg of Battle Creek, outstanding company. I was there 5 years, learned a lot, but it was very, very time intensive. 30-plus days a year. And frankly, I didn't want to give up 30 days a year. Pat, the grandkids. So I resigned from that board, and I'm on a couple mutual fund boards now in California, which are less time intensive, but these companies invest billions and billions of dollars, and I like the educational part of it. They say, well, we're going to buy $3 billion worth of X, Y, Z, and here's why. So it keeps my wheels turning a little bit too. So I enjoy that very much. But board seats today on big league companies are very, very intense and time-consuming. There's a little legal liability there, too, which never bothered me very much. Anyone else? Wrapping it up? Last chance? Thank you so much.
We have a small gift for you. You know you're going to be at the game. You pass the game with you. Listen, I'll keep you warm, but you might want to give it a pass. So keep that in mind.
Keep me warm, is it brandy?